Obviously, I'd like to say that we welcome this announcement of additional funding for our health system in Western Australia. Clearly, it is long overdue, and it is long overdue, and it is a symptom of what we have seen in health, particularly in recent times, of the under-resourced nature of the facilities that we need here in Western Australia. In particular, though, this morning, I especially want to thank the very brave doctors, nurses, hospital workers, their families, and the patients who have come forward over the last 8 months and spoken up about their experiences in the WA health system, and the WA health system not being up to scratch. And it is only because of the bravery and determined nature of those people coming forward continually and repeatedly and sharing their stories of a health system under pressure that this state government eventually has been dragged kicking and screaming to this announcement. I think we all understand pretty clearly. You are not buying hospitals from the private sector for $1.6 billion if you have done the proper planning and preparation for the health system in Western Australia. And that is exactly what has happened. It's for the government to explain how and why they got to this position, but nonetheless, we welcome the additional capacity that today's announcement will bring. I'll remind everybody that it was only a couple of months ago that we have a world-class health system. 2 months later, he's announced the purchase of an entire hospital with state government funding. And that is because we didn't have a world-class health system. We had world-class practitioners who were keeping it together, but finally the state government have recognised their failings, the lack of planning and the increasing capacity that is required for our ailing Western Australian health system. I'd also like to again make clear that we will keep the pressure on the Cook Labor government to maintain the forward momentum in health. It has been lacking. They have had 9 years and they simply have not done the work. And as a result, Western Australian taxpayers are being required to fork out today to make these arrangements, which will add important extra capacity, but nonetheless, proper planning would have prevented this type of expenditure in one hit at this moment. And I think with everything that we have seen over the last 24 hours in particular, and I note the cancellation of the Perth Convention and Exhibition Centre project, you have to ask, in what world is this state government still proceeding with a $217.5 million racetrack? How does that make sense? Where are their priorities? Where have their priorities been? And how on earth can they justify $217.5 million not going towards important infrastructure requirements, the PCEC for example, and not going towards this health envelope? I don't know how they can justify it. I'm not sure that they're even trying to justify it anymore. I don't think they know why they're building the racetrack. They've locked themselves into a position. They continue on with this reckless approach. And I know people around Perth and throughout Western Australia continue to ask, why are they doing it? How do they justify it? And when will they axe the track?
What the RPH upgrade is basically a whole new wing. Is that partial vindication of your party's commitment to build a new RPH and the Peel Health Campus? We're completely building a new hospital there after kind of 5 years of stalling on the.
Look, it's not for us to take credit, but I note health has been in the spotlight, and they have been under renewed pressure in the 42nd Parliament of Western Australia. And I will say this, I'm very proud of the role that the opposition has played in the first year of this new Parliament, putting the pressure on this state government, making them reprioritise some of their focus, and eventually leading to these sorts of announcements over the last couple of months, and this one in particular today. But don't be mistaken, they have been dragged kicking and screaming to this position. And I do wonder, had we not had a stronger opposition in the 42nd Parliament, had our voices not been louder, and had we not been focused on the health priorities of this state on behalf of all West Australians, would we have had this change in direction from this state government, who seem otherwise not prepared to consider or look at other people's views. Only when there's been enormous pressure from the opposition, from the doctors, from the nurses, from all of the groups in the community saying health needs attention, finally it's come. And I'm very proud of the role that the state opposition and the WA Liberal Party have played.
Does it successfully deflect your attack on Basil at all? Because, you know, that's 217 million, and they've now found 1.5 billion for health, so substantially more. You know, therefore, they've ticked that box that you were calling for on health.
Well, I'm not sure how. You know, on the same. You know, it's worth noting that in the same 12-hour period, not even 24-hour period, news of the convention centre, which would bring in $180 million annually and more than 70,000 international and interstate delegates, one of the mission statements of this state government, they've canned that project, yet we know that $217 million is allocated to the racetrack, and we know that the current running total of government spending to the NRL for the rugby team is at $100 million. There's $317.5 million. And they claim that they can walk and chew gum. Well, if you're going to put those two projects in different buckets, which I understand, health on one side and projects that are needed or that are aimed at bringing people to Western Australia to aid the economy in that way, I'd love to see the three business cases for the rugby team, for the racetrack and for the PCEC redevelopment laid out next to each other so that we could all decide with all of the information before us. What we do know is there's $317.5 million allocated to the rugby team and the racetrack that could have gone to the PCEC redevelopment. And it's for others to decide what would ultimately bring in the most net gain for the City of Perth, for the Perth metropolitan area and for the state of Western Australia. Everybody says consistently our convention centre is too small. It's the smallest capital city convention centre in Australia. We're missing out on those high-paying business tourists that would be coming. Yet they continue to prioritise government spending on the rugby team and $217 million on a racetrack that I am yet to find the demand for or any reason why we would be going ahead and building it.
Does the health spend justify the decision to axe the PCEC? Like, is that what or do you think the government's using it to that end?
Well, you know, I'll leave it for you all to judge about the timing of these respective events. I would understand that we are talking about different buckets of money for different projects, and I accept and understand. Although we would like to see and have spent 8 months in Parliament asking this state government to reprioritise their spending and to sharpen their focus on our crippled health system, I accept not every dollar of public money is going to be spent in health. I welcome this additional spending, of course I do. It's much needed. It's what we've been calling for. It's what doctors and nurses and hospital workers have been calling for. Of course, though, governments are going to continue to spend money on other areas. Now, really, I think the competing interests here are not health and the projects that would bring people into Western Australia. The competing interests are the rugby team, the racetrack, versus the PCEC. That's the competing interest that I see.
Do you think WA can have both the PCEC upgrades and the healthcare hospital funding?
Well, that's for the government to decide based on the business cases that they have before them. We're not privy to that information. We saw a 2-page document on the rugby team. We haven't seen the business case for the racetrack, and I haven't seen or been given a briefing on the Perth Convention and Exhibition Centre. But I do know what the industry and tourism experts tell us. A project like that could and should deliver for Western Australia. So without all of that information in front of me, it's not possible to quote accurately what the impact would be, but I do note what the experts say and what they've been advocating for. But health has to be a priority. Health should be the priority. It's what we've been calling for. It's what the people of Western Australia have been calling for. And I'm very pleased to see this announcement today to help alleviate the strain and stress on our public health system.
Government doesn't own PCEC, it's leased and it's a long lease held by private companies. I mean, is there any interest in the government spending taxpayers' dollars on something that's going to benefit two private companies?
Yeah, and it's an interesting point, but I note what their position was last year and earlier this year, and that was that they were going to spend it. I'll remind everybody, the Premier did a press conference with a river backdrop. He showed off the pretty pictures. The Deputy Premier was there as well. He spoke glowingly about the impact of this project for the city and for the state of Western Australia. He said it was going to happen. He talked about it being incredibly important economic infrastructure, and today they've backed away from it. So you'll have to ask them why they've decided to back away from it. Perhaps they've spoken to that, perhaps they haven't. But it was important. And here's the point. I mentioned earlier about you're not spending $1.6 billion or announcing $1.6 billion today if you have properly and carefully planned for health over the entirety of your time in office. 9 years they've had to plan this. They haven't planned it. So last year, when the Premier stood up and said, we're going ahead with this important PCEC redevelopment because of all of the money that it will help bring into WA, did they not know about the need in hospitals then? Did they not know about the crippled health system then? Of course they did, but they just didn't pay it the attention that it required.
Is it reasonable also to pause and just totally reconsider that project, that site, whether they should actually be building a new convention centre and getting rid of that?
Yeah.
And the constraints on the city when that project had gone ahead would have been a nightmare.
Well, perhaps I'll just put it this way. That would cost an extraordinary amount of money, I would have thought, to pull that one down and build a new one somewhere else. It's not something that I'm considering as the right way to move forward. But I can make it simple. We know there is $317 million from this bucket of money available to be spent on the convention centre today. Can the racetrack and stop spending taxpayer money on the rugby team? And there's $317 million that could give the PCEC some of the urgent upgrades that it requires to make it commercially viable to attract all of those guests into WA. So there is money available in that bucket. This is not the health bucket. And remember, it's important that everyone understands this. There are different buckets of money that governments operate with. This is not the same bucket of money. The health bucket has received an urgent injection of funds, and I'm pleased to see these hospital advancements today. The other bucket of money has $317 million being spent on a rugby team and a racetrack, but no money being spent on the PCEC. Where would that money be best spent from that bucket of money?
Have they been caught going back on their word and announcing something like the PCEC with artist impressions, a press conference, and the fanfare last January before it was actually sorted? And is there a danger that it's the same with health, where they've announced buying the Mount Lawley Hospital, but they're still in negotiations? It's not a done deal yet.
Which obviously would be why you're all questioning the timing of the announcement today. This is repeated behaviour and something that we've seen repeatedly from this government. The announcement before all of the work has been done. But we shouldn't be surprised in terms of the announcement of the PCEC. We shouldn't be surprised in terms of the PCEC redevelopment before all of the work was done, because it's exactly what we saw with the racetrack, and it's exactly what we saw with the rugby team. As it relates to health and today's announcement about the purchase of the St John of God site, what's important is that the announcement is matched with delivery, that there are 100 extra beds that the Premier has spoken about delivered to the public health system, and that those extra operating theatres do come online. So we welcome today's announcement, but now it's incumbent upon the government to actually get on and deliver. And the West Australian public are used to seeing announcements from this state government that ultimately don't lead to the delivery that was promised. And that's what West Australians will be watching for, that's what health workers will be watching for, and that's what the opposition will be watching
just
for.
On that point, just on Peel Health Campus as well, building a new hospital is promised in 2020. There's a $150 million expansion. How should residents down there be feeling? It is a big promise, but it still means that their new healthcare system is years and years away.
Well, and this is the thing. The government have been all over the shop. They have been all over the shop on health. They've spoken about projects, they've made some promises, they've made commitments, they've not had their eye on the ball, they haven't done the proper planning. Proper planning means you don't have band-aid measures or these sorts of announcements today. This is what we have because the proper planning and preparation hasn't been done. It's also what you get when Roger Cook, failed health minister, hands over to Amber Jade Sanderson, failed health minister, and then hands over to yet another health minister and 4 more in that cohort that we have in this parliament. They haven't done the work, they haven't been consistent, they haven't had a long-term plan, and that's why they've been forced into these measures that have been announced today.
Just on the firefighter pay deal, the unions rejected the latest government offer. They say the situation is turning catastrophic. Government argue they're negotiating in good faith. Where do you see that? Do you think the government need to do more to meet the union's demands?
You know, I've met with the firefighters and had the opportunity on Sunday to go down to the DFS Family Day at Elizabeth Quay. Really great day. You know, what struck me on Sunday was how many people are out to support our essential workers, how many people are out there for our essential emergency services workers, how many families were there, how proud we are of the great service that they provide. And I think there's an expectation that these men and women will be looked after. I note that the union has said today that they are confident, if not hopeful, or hopeful, if not confident, of going back to the table and getting a third offer that is closer to their demands. Again, I say to the state government, these people perform vital work. We all rely on them. Make the offer on the table one that matches expectations and gets this job done. We shouldn't have this dragging on. And this Labor government, I'm not sure what they're waiting for. Just get the deal done, get the firefighters what they need, and let them all get back to the important and incredibly vital role that they play in our community.
Do you think the current offer is too low?
Well, they think it's too low. They think it's too low, and they are hopeful of getting a new offer, and I hope they get a new offer too.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.